What would happen if Izuku Midoriya ended up marrying one of the princesses of Themyscira? How would the love triangle in between both of them turn out, and how would DCA introduce all the other heroes inside of My Hero Academia? Well, figure that out as we go along, and let's start it.
Superman and Green Lantern have apprehended Sinestro, Wonder Woman's dealt with Metallo, and Clayface is back in Arkham. John Johns, aka Martian Manhunter, mused as he gave the Watchtower's comm systems a quick go-through to be sure no other emergencies were active. Aside from a gang brawl in Bloodhaven that Nightwing and Robin were already mopping up, it was relatively quiet. Once he made sure things had settled down, he decided to do one of his favorite pastimes, people watching. He couldn't really explain it, but he found watching them go about their daily routines relaxing. The fact that they could, in spite of the monsters, supervillains, and disasters that seemed to occur almost regularly, told him the effort they made was well worth it. For now, there was one particular human that had piqued his interest, a Japanese boy named Izuku Midoriya. Innocuous as he looked, John found his mind and attitude fascinating. He was intelligent, almost dangerously so. Observant as well, if the fact that he made it a habit of taking notes about his fellow classmates was any indication. Namely because they were all metahuman, or as they insisted on being called, quirk-bearers. Midoriya, however, was what they called quirkless, a rather insulting term since metahuman abilities had become somewhat commonplace. Not having a so-called quirk was seen as a target of derision or shame, since it was considered a disability. The Rant Oracle had a learning that was something of legend. While a considerable portion of abilities were somewhat obscure or minor, like able to taste with one's fingers, or glow in the dark, a few had powers that were considered worthy of letting them become crime fighters, or pro-heroes. John grimaced just thinking that. Granted, there were a few that had the League's respect. Ones like All Might or Number 13, who took the term hero seriously, helping people because it was the right thing to do, who went at it with the passion needed to ensure they could help and protect others. Sadly, they were the rare few. Most just treated it like a 9-to-5 job, chasing glory and personal gain. They were the ones the League butted heads with sometimes, seeing League members as scrubs muscling in on their spotlights. An elitist attitude seemed prevalent among them too, believing that you had to have a quirk before you even thought of becoming a hero. It didn't need saying that this seriously rankled quite a few non-powered League members. Plastic Man had admitted that he felt a little embarrassed to be a metahuman when he first heard that. Which was why John was considerably annoyed at how the boy was treated, especially by his former friend. He had peeked into the boy's thoughts a couple of times out of curiosity. What he saw impressed and scared him a little. By simple observation and deduction, he'd figured out personalities, strengths, weaknesses, not just of his classmates, but the professional heroes as well. Pushed hard enough, Izuku Midoriya could easily become one of the most dangerous enemies they'd ever have. Since things had quieted down, now was as good a time as any to head down. Flash, I'm going to head down to Japan for a little while. He called out to the red-clad speedster. Have fun, Jay. Oh, bring me back some fried rice? John nodded and made his way to the teleporter. 3333333333333. Making sure it would land him in an unseen spot, near the local school, John ported down and quickly shapeshifted into a portly and somewhat unremarkable-looking man. A quick look around, and he headed to the street. As he rounded the corner, something lying on the sidewalk, faint wisps of smoke coming off it. Nearing it, he saw that it was a scorched notebook. The writing on the cover was damaged, but he could make out Hero on it. This is Midoriya's. Why is it? He frowned when he remembered the boy's worst bully could emit explosive blasts. Petty. Surprisingly, the cover had taken the brunt of things, leaving the contents mostly intact. He leafed through it and was impressed at the amount of detail he'd put into studying them, complete with sketches. As he looked through it, he found out that pro-heroes weren't the only ones to come under his analysis. Turns out he'd studied the League as well. John's eyes widened a little when he read through it. Observant was putting it mildly, not only had he built up similar profiles of a few League members, he'd actually come close to deducing the identities of a few. In fact, he really did figure out the names of some of the original group and a couple of others. Clark and Bruce would have a fit if they saw this. He chuckled. Though Bruce would probably have a fit, then be impressed at the way Midoriya figured it out. Texas Smash. A voice roared from down the road, quickly getting John's attention, followed by the rumble of a powerful shockwave. That was definitely All Might. He said to himself, shifting back and putting the notebook away before turning invisible. And if he's here, then odds are good Midoriya will have found him. He patted the book and took off in the direction of the shout. By the time he reached the spot, a noticeable section of area underneath a bridge that had been shattered, All Might was already leaping into the air. Focusing slightly, he saw he also had Midoriya on his leg, holding on for dear life. The combination was kind of amusing, aside from All Might trying to shake the boy off. John quickly took off after them in case Midoriya really did fall off. Kid's got a grip. John mused, watching Midoriya hang on until they landed on a nearby roof. When he asked if someone like him could really be a hero, he moved in a bit to listen. The desperation in his voice while he explained why was damn near heartbreaking. God, he's been beat into the ground so many times by almost everyone, just for not being born with a power. He also noticed that All Might seemed a little under the weather, and nearly dropped his invisibility in shock when the man suddenly shrank into a skinny, almost skeletal figure. To quote Diana, great hurrah. What happened to him? Midoriya freaked out as well. Where'd All Might go? The deflated All Might looked at him. I'm right here, he said, before coughing up blood. But, how? The boy freaked. I guess I better explain. He lifted up his shirt to reveal a heavily scarred area, taking up nearly his entire left side. Both John and Midoriya were surprised by the condition. The skin looked almost seared, a spider web of crack-like purple and red marks that radiated out from an angry, crimson wound, resembling a raised, open sore that had yet to heal. It was as though someone had driven a red-hot poker into his ribs, twisting and shifting it to rip and catch as much as possible before pulling, tearing away a piece of his soul along with the charred flesh. It was painful to look. Izuku looked like the sight alone was making him ill. For John, though, it was far more. His empath powers couldn't help but let him perceive and visualize just what had managed to inflict it, and the still lingering damage. I never thought I'd be so glad to not have a humanoid digestive system, otherwise I'd be seeing my last meal again right now. I got this 5 years ago, facing off against a supervillain named All for One. He went to prison, but not before landing the blow that did this. All Might sighed. Ever since then, I've been on a time limit when using my power, one for all. When I hit that limit, I'm forced to turn back into the skinny guy I really am. After a moment, he put his shirt back down and looked at Izuku. I'm gonna be honest with you, kid. Being a hero means a lot more than endorsements, fans, and flashy skills. It means willingly putting yourself out there, putting your body and life on the line to protect people. To make sure that at the end of the day, they can go home to their families and loved ones. His tone became more morose then. Unfortunately, without a quirk, no hero association would accept you. I'm sorry, but you can't be a pro hero if you don't have one. With that, All Might slowly headed to the stairwell. Before he went down, though, he gave him one last look. For what it's worth, my gut's telling me you probably would have made a pretty decent one. Midoriya. John thought, seeing the broken look on the boy's face at hearing that, along with the sensation of his world crumbling. However, he heard something else when All Might said that. It was a slight emphasis on one thing. Pro-hero. Before he could do anything, a series of loud explosions ripped through another part of town. He quickly headed over to see that a metahuman, who looked like a bad Clayface knockoff, was attempting to take over a boy's body. He recognized him as Katsuki Bokugo, Midoriya's primary antagonizer. A few other pro-heroes were there, trying to stop the metahuman, but their abilities weren't having any effect. All Might had arrived as well, but it looked like he was unable to transform just yet. Knowing there wasn't much time, John prepared to move in when Midoriya came out of nowhere. What's he doing? The pro-heroes tried to stop him, but he was going full tilt, straight towards the imitator. Hey! Ugly! Izuku yelled, getting the mass attention before hurling his backpack into his face, not even breaking stride on his way to the captive. Ag! You little! The villain yelled, shaking his face from the impact. While that went down, he was already working to pull Bakugo out. What the hell are you doing, Deku? The blonde demanded. What do you think? Midoriya snapped back. Even I could see you were hoping someone would help you. Besides, I couldn't live with myself if you died, regardless of how much a jerk you are now. No you don't. The sludgy villain roared, forcing Izuku to jump away from a tendril-like fist. He tried to swing away again, but froze when someone else grabbed hold of his hostage. Someone he hoped he'd gotten away from. Hang on, young man, you'll be free in a moment. All Might yelled, having somehow managed to transform. He ripped Bakugo from the villain's grip with a massive pull. At the same time, he was drawing back for a Detroit smash. Once again, the street was covered with blasted bad guy, and the crowd that had gathered cheered. 3333333333333. John couldn't help but frown. Things had begun to settle down, but the Bakugo boy was praised for supposedly fighting back, though the surrounding area seemed to have been his target instead. Midoriya, on the other hand, was giving a dressing down for risking his life. It was a bit reckless, but he was doing what heroes tended to do. He was unhurt, so that was something. Right now, both boys were being processed and questioned at the police station. Knowing they'd both be there for a little while, he decided now was the time to make his move. After all, like All Might said, they wouldn't let him become a pro-hero. They couldn't keep him from becoming a hero anyway. Switching his communicator on, he headed off to the Midoriya household. Watchtower. The no-nonsense voice came through. He couldn't resist grinning. Batman, it's John, just letting you know I'm meeting up with a League potential. The Midoriya boy? That was quick. You're in Japan, Musatafa City to be exact, John. There's only one reason you'd be there, given the concentration of pro-heroes. He tried to keep the dislike out of his voice. Though I am curious as to why you want to recruit him. John proceeded to recount the boy's discussion with All Might, along with how he nearly rescued his classmate from the metahuman criminal. A little reckless, but it was almost successful, given what you said. Batman responded after he was done. And I can see where both him and All Might are coming from. Without a superpower, the pro-hero path isn't good for him, but he's shown he understands the dangers of our line of work, and I have to give him credit for sticking to his hopes. Also, I should add that he's figured out your Bruce Wayne. He almost had to shift into a mouthless form to keep from laughing when he picked up on his teammate's thought process coming to a screeching halt. The calm was silent for several seconds before, what? Among other things. Invitation to the Watchtower seconded, if only get answers. The man didn't miss a beat in his response. 3333333333333. Oh, what is keeping him? Inko asked, heading over when the knocking started. I hope he's okay, I'm coming. She opened the door. Yes, who is Dash? She had a coughing fit as her voice caught in her throat. Am Martian Manhunter? She yelped once she could talk again. Good evening, Mrs. Midoriya. And please, call me John. I believe we'll be on a more familiar basis soon. What do you mean? She asked, mentally reeling from the fact that not only was a member. Basically it concerns your son, Izuku. Izuku? Oh no, is he hurt? I'll wring Katsuki Bakugo's neck if he's had a hand in it. Despite her son's attempts to hide the bullying, Inko's mom sense told her something was up, namely when she saw the looks of contempt he got from the blonde when they were in the same room. And now she wanted to punch herself for not acting the first time he tried to play Scar's office tripping on the sidewalk. Ma'am, it's okay. It's nothing like that. Due to the height difference, he had to kneel down in order to put a reassuring hand on her shoulder. He's fine. I'm here because your son is being considered for training and eventually, a possible membership in the Justice League, Mrs. Midoriya? He didn't get to continue before Inko's eyes rolled back, and she teetered backwards in a dead faint. 333333333333333. Oh. Inko moaned as she came to, her nose crinkling some from the smelling salts John was holding out to her. She shook her head to clear the grogginess and looked to see the superhero crouched by her. Oracle was right, these do come in handy, he said, helping her up. Why, you're real, she uttered, her voice laced with no small amount of fangirl excitement. One of the original Justice League members is in my house. She was in mid-squee when she caught herself. Sorry. I got excited. Her face turned beet red. Well, that's adorable. Did I hear you right? Izuku, my Izuku is a potential for the Justice League, yes. He grinned at how excited she seemed. Oh my, this, not to sound rude or anything, but why? I mean, he's been told so many times he couldn't be a hero just because he doesn't. One word, Batman. Oh. Right. She chuckled. As for why, regardless of the pro-hero agency's insistence on needing powers to be one, your son has a lot of potential. From what I've seen, he has the motivation, the drive, and the knowledge of what being a hero really means. If he accepts, we can have him introduced to a few members before the end of the day. Wow. You really think he can be one? As long as he's willing to put in the effort. Now, care to accompany me in telling him? I think having his mother there will help show the offer is legitimate. Oh, sure whoop. She squeaked when he picked her up bridal style. Where is he, exactly? At the local police station. I'll explain on the way. Police eek. She held on for dear life when he took off into the air. 3333333333333. That was amazing. One of the officers at the station clapped a hand on Bakugo's back. Boy's hero material, no doubt. Another looked at him with what he apparently tried to pass off as mimicking parental pride. No shit, genius. Bakugo snorted derisively as the two cops praised him for how he handled the situation. Probably wouldn't have had any trouble if a certain quirkless hadn't gotten in the way. The second one looked over disdainfully at Izuku, who was sitting in one of the waiting area's cheap plastic chairs. Despite pretending not to listen, he fought the urge to say something uncomplimentary. It felt like school all over again. Bakugo was called the best. Izuku could see him preening at the praise, no matter how much he scowled, and he was the bottom rung. And now that All Might, someone he looked up to so much, saying he couldn't be a hero without a quirk. As the lead weight settled in his stomach, he started wondering if maybe he just wasn't meant to. Holy crap! The Martian Manhunter! Someone cried out, yanking him out of his thoughts. True enough, the unmistakable green skin and blue cape of the extraterrestrial hero stood out among the parting throng. Izuku's jaw dropped. The Justice League, here? Why? He got his answer when he began making his way towards them, and Bakugo, it seemed. Excuse me, young man, he said, a visible smile on his face. Ha! Told you I'd always be better than you, Deku. Bakugo sneered, walking up to meet the hero with a strut. Even the Justice League wants what the hell. He stumbled when Martian Manhunter phased through him, not even acknowledging that he was in the way. Izuku Midoriya? John stepped up to the green-haired boy. Hey! Don't you ignore me, Greenbaldy! Bakugo yelled, looking like he was ready to explode the man for the slight. John, however, merely glanced back him. I don't have time for your antics, child. Child. I'll show HAGKK. He started, only to be steamrolled by a borderline panicking Inko. Izuku! She cried, hugging her son tightly. What were you thinking, rushing that villain like that? I know you wanted to do the right thing, despite all Katsuki's done, but what if something had gone wrong? Her hug tightened, and they could hear her fighting back sobs of worry. You could have been hurt. Or worse. Izuku looked on in surprise. Mom? When? How? John told me what happened. He saw you go in to help him and everything. You did? He asked, looking at the man. John nodded. In fact, that's part of why I'm here. Izuku Midoriya, you are officially invited to the Watchtower as a League potential. The whole room went silent when they heard that, along with several jaws dropping. I take it this happens a lot. Inko said, looking around. You get accustomed to it. He replied. Say that again. Izuku asked, once he finally regained his voice. The Justice League wants, me? What? Hell no. Bakugo snapped, storming towards them. That shit Deku hasn't got any damn business being a hero. Excuse me? Inko's voice was a dead calm. Care to repeat that, Katsuki? Oh crap. Izuku looked for something to get behind. Mom's pissed. You heard me. Anger overshadowed the other boy's common sense, evident by the audible micro-explosions occurring on his hands. He's quirkless. No real hero dash. John cut him off. I'm sure Batman would have an interesting rebuttal for that. He followed by gently setting a hand on Inko's shoulder to calm her. No. I'm the one with the power. That runt. Rolling his eyes, John made a twisting gesture towards him, and they were greeted with sudden silence. Bakugo was moving, but no sound came out. I'm altering the airflow between him and us to filter out his voice. He explained, seeing their perplexed looks. Anyway, Izuku, we've seen you have potential. And while you may not be able to become a pro hero, they have no say on you becoming a hero anyway. I can still be a hero? This is almost too good to be true. After what All Might said, I thought it was going to be a case of just not meant to be. But, now a member of the Justice League is right here. The rest of what he said descended into low, rapid-fire mumbling that even John couldn't make out. Midoriya? We can continue this conversation on a more mental line, if that'll help you organize your train of thought better. I got it. He tends to do this when he gets to thinking about something a lot harder than necessary. Inko gently poked her son in the forehead. Honey, you're mumbling. Huh? Izuku blinked, and turned bright red. Oh, sorry. Oh, of course I'll go. He bounced off the chair. I should probably get packed. Do I need to bring anything specific? John ticked off a couple of things. I would suggest some clothing comfortable enough to work out in, at the minimum. Also, this would be a good idea as well. He handed Izuku back his notebook. I couldn't resist taking a peek. He rambled slightly, looking thoroughly embarrassed. Well, I get kind of curious about the pros and cons of their abilities. Actually, I was quite impressed by your detective work. And I have reason to believe Batman is rather keen to pick your brain as well. Really? Izuku was thoroughly at a loss for words. Unfortunately, someone else wasn't. I'm sorry, but that kid's in a lot of trouble for interfering in a hero situation. One of the cops who'd been praising Bakugo spoke up. He's lucky All Might is there or he could have gotten the boy killed dash. He froze when Inko gave him a look that would have had the rank 1 hero quickly getting out of the way. Before she could open fire, though, John quickly chimed in. Actually, while he did put himself in harm's way, Midoriya did the right thing under the local self-defense laws. Laws which also apply to the defense of others, the very same statute that allows hero actions. And if I recall, they were never repealed, nor reworded to prevent those without quirks from acting. Well. The cop faltered. It seemed apparent that he hadn't been on the job long. John, however, wasn't done yet. He turned his attention to Bakugo. Also, since you're neither a member of an approved hero group, like the Justice League, nor have you been issued a pro hero license, you are liable for all damages your powers caused, due to the same regulations that require said license. He noticed the boy looked like he was about to blow a gasket, but wasn't worried. He was fast enough to incapacitate him before he tried something. I should also point out that part of the reason no hero could really act was because you were firing wildly in your attempt to hit your captor. And such things like that are exactly why licenses are required. I didn't need anyone's help, you green baldy. Bakugo shouted. I just needed to hit that bastard once and he'd have been history. Oh yeah, you really had him on the ropes, Kakin. Izuku said with less than subtle sarcasm, using the old nickname that now irritated the blonde. Shut it, Deku. Or I'll. Bakugo started to lunge. He made one step when he froze as John's arm extended towards him alarmingly fast, the hand phasing into his chest. John looked unimpressed. You also now have the choice of sitting down and calmly waiting for your parents to arrive, or being visited in the ICU for an unprovoked attack on a League member. He stated dryly. I was going after Dash. Bakugo cut himself off with a whine of pain, his eyes widening. Ouch. And that was me flicking a muscle. By accepting the invitation, Izuku was now considered part of the League, albeit in more of an intern level. But, he falls under the same protection regardless. Now, are you going to sit down? Because Flash let me test this out on him, and in his own words, getting your pectorals slapped from the inside freaking hurts. I'll sit down. He whimpered, half walking, half shambling towards a seat on the far side of the room once the hand was removed. He'll be okay. John assured the Midoriyas. I learned enough about human biology to make sure I don't do any real damage. Though he will be sore for a day or two. Now, I'll take you two home so Izuku can get ready. 3333, 333, 3333. The sun was halfway setting by the time they reached the apartment. According to Inko, the Bakugos were gone already, since the police had called them earlier about their son. While Izuku went to pack, John waited outside. Well, he accepted. He said, idly fingering his communicator. Good. Batman responded over it. I'm still trying to make sense of how a 14-year-old boy was able to figure out something like this on his own. Don't worry, you'll have plenty of time to talk to him about it. Do I even want to know what you meant by that? You'll see shortly. John out. He switched it off when the door opened and Izuku emerged with a travel bag. You be good, honey. Inko said, hugging him tightly. And remember to listen to what they say. I will, Mom. Izuku hugged her back before stepping over to John. Okay, I'm ready. Fair warning, first-time teleportation can be a little disorientating. I recommend holding your breath during the shift. Okay. Izuku took a few deep breaths in preparation, when they heard a voice they didn't really expect or hope to encounter again that day. Deku. You shit loser. I thought he agreed to sit and wait for his parents. John commented, seeing the aggressive blonde running towards the apartment building. Izuku signed. When Katsuki gets himself riled up enough, he stops listening to anyone. I see. He calmly hit a switch on his communicator, signaling for the teleportation system to lock on. You have no right. With a massive blast, Bakugo launched himself at his green-haired victim, determined to punish him for daring to think he could become a hero. Unfortunately for him, both of them vanished in a plume of light, right as he swung at Izuku. The hell dash. Wham! Woo! Izuku wobbled a little, having felt his very being phased through the fabric of reality. That first step's a doozy. When his senses settled, he found himself taking in the sight of a massive room. The glimmer of metal and electronics surrounding him, along with faint murmurs of chatter from people there. Everywhere he looked, he was greeted by the sight of uniformed people operating complex machinery and computers, robots toting around equipment and crates. But most of all were the League members themselves. People from nearly all walks of life, and like John, even from other planets. Some were chatting with others, some were just passing through, a few flying through. Izuku almost had to remind himself to breathe, while he looked up to All Might. These guys weren't just experienced heroes, there was a reason people called them superheroes. Izuku, welcome to the Watchtower. John set a hand on his shoulder, looking amused at his awestruck expression. We're currently in the central hub. Unreal. He managed to get out, looking out towards the huge window that gave a view of space and the stars beyond. Izuku Midoriya? A gruff, slightly deadpan voice spoke up, snapping out of his daze. BB Batman. Izuku looked ready to hyperventilate when he saw the Dark Knight heading his way. Oh man, the Batman is right in front of me. Hey, what's all the excitement about? A red blur zipped up, stopping beside Batman to show Flash, giving them a quizzical look. And who's the kid? Bats, I thought you said we weren't supposed to hold tours up here anymore. And the Flash too. You're like number 4 in my top 10 heroes. New recruit. Batman answered, looking to John. Still have the notebook? Only 4? Flash sulked a little. At least tell me I'm higher than Green Arrow weight. What do you mean new recruit? Right here. John handed it over. Izuku blinked. My notebook? But Katsuki blew it up. Luckily, he underestimated how durable those can be. Speaking of which, the Caped Crusader held up said book, looking Izuku dead on. Explanation. How did you find out? Izuku gulped, thinking he'd possibly done his research a bit too well. It was no secret the man had been scary down to an art form. Location and expenses. He blurted out, panicking a little. Come again? You're based in Gotham, so that meant it had to be as someone who lived there. The fact you don't hesitate to use force on crooks indicates a lingering trauma that's left a need to work out a measure of aggression, and then there's your gear. What about it? He asked, raising an eye behind his cowl. Think about it, the Batmobile, Batwing, even a high-performance boat. Not to mention your suit and the tech you use. There's no way the cost of all that wouldn't have been noticeable in your tax statements without being able to personally afford it all. So that meant you're either Bruce Wayne or you've worked for him directly, meaning him or his butler Alfred Pennyworth. The timing of the Robins appearing alongside Wayne's adopted new wards narrows it down. Not to mention the fact that between the two of you, Alfred just doesn't have the build to be Batman regularly, but it fits with the one-time Batman and Bruce Wayne were both seen simultaneously. So you're saying the primary reason you've concluded that I'm Bruce Wayne is expenses, yeah. Izuku nodded. I mean, the Batmobile's gotta be in the millions range. It's not that much. Batman muttered quietly. He's got you there, B-Man. Flash cackled. Heck, it's like with how you and Mr. Kent I mean Superman dash. Wait. Batman held a hand up to stop him. Flash, contact Superman and tell him to get here, on the double. A slight grin appeared. I want to see the look on that man's face when he hears this. Oh, that's evil. Flash replied. I love it. As he sped off, John held up a finger. You know he was giggling like the Joker when he left, right? 33333333333333333. When Flash said Batman wanted to see him, Clark had figured that it was something involving Luthor or another possible attack from Brainiac. Finding it was because of a 14-year-old boy from Japan, however, wasn't even on the list. Or the fact that said boy, after introductions were made, would have him do something he hadn't done since he first learned he was from another planet. Come again? He asked, wiggling a finger in his fear, much to Flash and, since she heard Jonas Joker comment, Wonder Woman's amusement. Izuku rubbed his arm sheepishly. Well, if you add up Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent becoming friends almost right after you and Batman resolved the conflict you two had, it makes sense. Also, I digitally altered a couple of photos to swap glasses between them and compared facial features. Wait. He looked at Batman. So it's basically your fault he figured out my identity? Not a word. Batman muttered. I'm just saying dash. Not you. He glared slightly at Flash. Hey, not saying anything. He held his hands up placatingly. Just grinning. That doesn't help. Actually, Flash. John fought back a chuckle. The speedster paled a little. You're kidding me. Izuku started up and how he looked into reports regarding how Flash's speed influenced weather patterns, except for the area located around Central City. Well, I have to head back there real quick. He had to fight harder against laughing at the way Superman clapped a hand over the man's mouth when he tried to make a distraction. Promised Mrs. Midoriya I'd give her a way to talk with him while he's up here. By the time he was out of earshot, Izuku could be heard moving to Green Lantern, and how he found him just from military records and finding his picture after hearing he'd had training prior to becoming a Lantern. I think he's going to fit right in. 3333333333333. It didn't take him long to retrieve what he needed, after explaining to the technicians just why he was after a portable comm system. A quick teleport found him at the entrance to the apartment building. Before he could enter though, a booming laugh reached his ears. I am here. All Might bellowed as he skidded around the corner, only to pause when he saw who was there. And you are not young Midoriya. Awkward. Hello, All Might. John greeted him, aware of how boisterous the pro-hero tended to be. Hello, Martian Manhunter, what brings you here? He asked, settling down quickly. All Might took a moment to phrase his next question in a peaceful fashion. While he disagreed with certain aspects of the Justice League, he didn't have any major issues with them. Say, you wouldn't have happened to have seen a young boy by the name of Izuku Midoriya by any chance, would you? Yes, actually. John replied. He accepted an invitation to the Watchtower. The symbol of peace looked honestly surprised. Really? Wow, bet he was excited. Heard that doesn't happen often. The man let out a deep, but brief, chuckle. You see, the thing is, I saw what he did during the villain attack, and was hoping to ask him to become my successor for One for All and Dash. No. I am sorry? The blunt response caught his off guard, so he was at a significant loss for words. John's expression softened slightly. Don't get me wrong, it's admirable that you think him worthy. However, as it is right now, his body cannot contain it. The sheer amount of power One for All would have passed on would tear him apart. And, in all honesty, you lack the teaching skills to properly guide him in controlling it. While you were able to handle it from the start, that doesn't mean he will. Also, no offense, but you aren't cut out to take on a ward-like sidekick. All Might winced slightly at that. The Martian Manhunter had a point. Toshinori had never really instructed someone on utilizing a quirk, especially due to how quickly he took up his. Even Gran Torino had told him that. Well, would you at least consider letting me offer it to him after he's trained up a bit? We'll see how things go up on the Watchtower. He gave a small shrug. Someone more skilled might take him under their wing first. Oh God, you're throwing him at Batman, aren't you? All Might actually felt himself pale a tad at that. The Bat was considered a little on the scary side, even among pro-heroes. Someone with no powers, yet he studied all existing heroes to the point where he was nearly able to rescue his friend single-handedly in a plan developed mid-run? Who would you ask to bring out his potential? He attempted to come up with a counter-argument, but failed. Just, don't let him be Robin, okay? He asked with a near-pleading tone. Midoriya's got the spirit to be his own hero, not the latest in a sidekick succession. Besides, I'm afraid of what would happen if he were exposed to the likes of Joker, or any of the man's personal rogues gallery. I'll see what I can do. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to give this to his mother. He held up the small case he was carrying. One thing though, I'd strongly recommend easing up on the flexing. Flex. While they look impressive, those big, excessive gestures you enjoy are putting a lot of strain on your wound. All Might froze, shock causing him to revert back to his skinny body. How'd you? He sputtered, watching John head in. How the hell did he know? Unfortunately, that thought was cut off as he started hacking up blood again. Crap. And this is one of my good shirts. The Justice League routinely goes over pro-hero medical records among other things for possible members. John's voice rang out from inside the door. You were under consideration for a good while, but it was eventually decided you did more good as the #1 pro-hero than as one more super strong League member. All Might blinked, wiping his mouth. League member? You guys considered asking me? This time he heard the response in his head. Dedicated to the well-being of civilians, giving little consideration to the glory beyond the good you can do with it, and even pushing yourself through continuous agony so others don't lose hope? In character you're an excellent fit for the League, if a bit more bombastic than the senior members sometimes like, and your powers would mesh well with several members. But, as I explained, we concluded you do more good where you are, which is why you're our main contact when we have to work with or through pro-heroes. He could only chuckle a little in response. Wow. 33333333333333333. Just turn this knob until you hear the click. That will activate the screen. Then just adjust the volume slide until you're comfortable with it. John finished explaining the comm system to Inko once he's setting it up for her. Oh my. She said weakly. Almost afraid to touch it. Seems so fragile. Trust me, Mrs. Midoriya, if you accidentally knocked it off the table, the floor would get the worst of it. He gave her a reassuring smile. Cyborg designed these. He even had Superman, Supergirl, and Power Girl see how far they could stip them across the Pacific. Aquaman found them about 7.5 miles off the coast. Even called from one. Oh, wow. She gave the piece of tech a surprised look. Just one thing. Depending on who he'll be training with at a given moment, Izuku may be taken out to a spot for endurance training or just because they feel he could use some fresh air. You may not be able to catch him every time you call, but I tend to monitor the communications so I should able to let him know to call you back when he gets back on board. Of course. Mr. Johns? If he'd had eyebrows, John S. would have shot up his forehead when she hit him with a mother-style hug. Thank you, for everything. Once she let go, he gave his goodbyes and left, though he couldn't ignore the spring in his step. Times like this make the job all that worth it. 333333333333333. Izuku was still going strong when he returned, arriving just in time to hear and Miss Drake. You should probably look into getting a mask when you're out as Black Canary. A look at the group showed a few more members had arrived, possibly to see why some of the senior members were huddled up so oddly. And nearly all of them looked amused, gobsmacked, or a combination thereof. Even Batman, despite his mask, some could tell he was both impressed and frustrated at how effectively the boy had sussed things out. Alright, if only for security matters, I vote he be made a full League member. Batman spoke up, using his no-nonsense tone to cut through the chatter. Seconded. Superman didn't miss a beat. Flash's hand shot up. Same. Also, anyone else a little freaked that a kid found all that out by himself? Izuku froze. Full member? Flash just pointed at him. You're kinda scary, kiddo. Apparently that was enough to set off another bout of frantic mumbling, Superman managing to catch snippets. Dear Rao, son, inhale. So, how many more secret identities did he figure out just from being here and meeting the team? John asked the Dark Knight telepathically while Wonder Woman took the initiative with a hug. All of them. Came the answer. John raised an eyebrow. Seriously? And several security passwords. He's already admitted that he's guessed where the Batcave is by proxy of my identity. I suspect he's also calculated the geographic locations for Themyscira and the Fortress of Solitude. He gave John a glare normally reserved for Flash when he heard the Martian applauding in his head. And how many insisted you train him? All of them. Looking at Izuku, who was currently hanging limp in Wonder Woman's arms, he noted she looked quite proud of herself. His first lesson, how to keep his mouth shut. How well do you think that'll turn out? I'll let you know. Look on the bright side, Bruce. You're a lot more fun to be around when you have someone to train. Shut up, John. What is that? He pointed at the 30-foot-high, 100-foot by 100-foot structure resting in the watchtower's atrium. One side had a small entrance, where Raven was calmly waiting. A labyrinth. I asked Dr. Fate and Zatanna to help create for Midoriya's physical evaluation. He has to work his way through the challenges on both floors to reach the escape hatch on top. That doesn't seem too bad. He pointed at a timer that was counting down. It just went under 30 seconds. He's also on a time limit. 2.5 minutes to clear as far as he can before Raven goes after him. He tapped a button on the console. Raven, T-minus 20 seconds. This should be interesting. There was a definite hint of mirth in the normally emotionless girl's voice. Never had an actual reason to chase a boy before. Okay. Superman responded. Dare I ask what kind of challenges you've concocted for him? Instead of responding, Batman simply activated one of the screens. It revealed a dimly lit room where Izuku was in the middle of placing a trio of heavy-looking plates on a central post. Looks like he's almost finished the Tower of Hanoi room. Superman narrowed his eyes as he looked at the screen. 15, 25, and 35-pound plates? Figured I'd start light. A beep told him the countdown was over and he signaled Raven to enter. 1, 2, Raven's coming for you. The girl chanted as she vanished into the maze. So, first impressions? Well, John S. right about him having a lot of potential. Just means it's going to need a lot of work to bring it out. And, as much as I hate admitting it, 10 years of bullying has given him a considerable amount of endurance, as well as a relatively high pain tolerance. Tag, you lose. Yaha. They were cut off by a loud, terror-filled shriek over the comm system, followed by a thud. Raven, what happened? He passed out when I caught him. Raven responded. There was silence for a second before she spoke up again. 25-pound Hanayama puzzles? Really, Batman? Where'd you even get them? He refused to answer. 33333333333333333. I want in. Batman didn't even bother looking at Green Arrow. You want in? He repeated, managing to make it a statement and question at the same time. With training the new kid. Come on, Bats, I got nothing against metas, but these pro-hero jerks annoy me just as much as you. A nose tweaking will be good for them. Oliver moved to get in the Dark Knight's field of view. Just think of it as expanding his repertoire. He gets something for range, and you're already gonna teach him how to hold his own when things get up close and personal. He gave a light-hearted scoff. Hell, wouldn't be surprised if you're already picking out a few fighting styles. Batman didn't respond for a moment, making Arrow think he wasn't paying attention. Sabat de Ruse and Muay Thai. They should fit him well with the proper physical conditioning. Okay, Muay Thai I know, but savoir? French kickboxing. The original form uses knee and elbow strikes, throws, locks, and various takedowns. It should overlap well with Muay. Also considering teaching him tunfas to augment his strikes. He turned to his fellow vigilante. You should know that you aren't the only one interested in training him. I'll primarily be working on his general combat and deduction cabalites. He glanced at a small list of names. We're going to have to work on a schedule. So, that means I can take long range? Fine, but no trick arrows until his aim is consistent. Come on. He can see the flying dash. Batman cut him off. And that's why it's no dot. Ah, you're no fun. 33333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333. We have reached the training facility. The droid intoned once it and Izuku made it to the room in question. Please wait at a bench press and your training partner will be along shortly. Okay. Dressed in the workout clothes he'd been given, Izuku responded hesitantly as he looked around. Like several of the other rooms, it had massive windows/shields that looked out into space. The equipment looked familiar, though a bit on the high-tech side, except for an area in the corner that had red lights, and the bizarre-looking treadmill. Batman had told him that he'd be starting his training with a workout. Partly to get him started, and to gauge his physical limits. Picking a bench that looked comfortable, he laid back and got under the weight handle. Nothing was on it, so he just took a minute to get comfortable. Okay, Izuku, just take a deep breath and relax. You've already passed out once when they made you a full Justice League member. He briefly froze up at that. Him. Izuku Midoriya, the Deku, an official JL member. He still couldn't decide if he should panic or let out a whoop. Don't worry, you'll get used to it. A feminine voice chirped from somewhere near his head, followed by a head of blonde hair framing one of the cutest girls' faces he'd ever seen. A pair soft-looking pink lips and bright blue eyes greeted him. So you're the new guy? Asterisk gulp asterisk waya, I'm Mizuku Izuku M. Midoriya. He sputtered, face turning bright red. Sue, Supergirl? Right in one. Her smile widened. Or since you've managed to guess our identities outside work, Kara Kent. Right now, though, you get to call me your spotter. Oh, okay. He managed to get out, doing his best to not let his gaze drift to the skin-tight, curve-hugging leotard she had on. First thing you ought to know is these barbell handles are a carbon nanotube construct with a sheet metal skin. They're really light, but can hold some serious weight. This way we can make full use of the plates. That makes sense. I heard it's stronger than steel on an ounce-to-ounce basis. Now, since this is kinda my first time doing this, I'm gonna start you off slow. She picked up a couple of 25-pound weights and slid them onto the bar. Just do a couple of reps and we can see how much more to add. All right. Izuku focused on the bar as best he could, but being a teenage boy had its disadvantages. Especially when she leaned into his view. Ready? Don't worry, I keep near to catch it in case you lose your grip. Ready. He took a deep breath and lifted the weight off the rack. He didn't see what she had put on it, but while he did feel some weight, the first two were relatively light. Not bad, let's put some more on. The next few minutes followed the same pattern. He'd perform a rep or two, and Kara would apply a little more weight each time. Gradually Izuku found himself having to put more effort into the lift. All the while trying to ignore the fact that her hips and chest were less than 2 feet from him. She seemed satisfied when he was having to exert himself to make the rep. That's pretty good. You, sir, most indeed lift. She laughed a little at herself before something caught her eye near his feet. Oh, wow. What's wrong? Izuku asked. He got no answer, though he did see her cheeks were pinking a little. Kara? Wondering what had her attention, he looked down to see what was so interesting. The blood drained from his face when he saw. Standing proudly, was a tent in his shorts. Whether from embarrassment, or panic at the thought of popping a boner in front one of the JL's female members, plus said member was the Man of Steel's younger cousin, Izuku yelped and shot up to try and hide the problem. Unfortunately, while Kara held onto the barbell easily, he forgot it was in the path. While it was light, the handle was still pretty sturdy, and then his forehead collided with it. Consciousness was on the losing side. 333333333333333333333. When he came to, his head was pounding, and a set of bright lights forced him to squint. He's coming to. He heard Batman speak, causing him to try and blink away the brightness and headache. WH. What hit me? he asked sleepily, seeing things slowly come into focus. He was now in a medical area, with Batman, Superman, Kara, and John standing by his bed. Superman and John seemed a mix of amused and slightly exasperated at Kara, who was blushing hotly. Batman, however, looked contemplative. I probably should have expected this. You okay, Izuku? Kara asked. I never saw anyone react that strongly to being caught at attention. Yeah, I mean, I was a teenage boy once too, so I know the feeling. Superman added. It's embarrassing, that much is true. But usually just turning around was enough. Izuku looked down at the bedsheet that had been put over him, thankful that it at least hid his still present humiliation. Perhaps clearing the air would be prudent. John offered. Talking about your past friendly experiences would help. He then quietly sent the boy a telepathic message. It's okay, Izuku. No one's here to make fun of you. He looked at the group, fiddling with the material. Does my mom count? Wait. Kara looked dumbfounded. You're saying you haven't had any friends? What about a girlfriend? His brief silence told them everything. I used to be friends with a boy named Katsuki Bakugo, until we were 4, and I was told I was quirkless. Quirk, oh, he turned out to be one of those types, didn't he? The disgust in her voice was evident. Izuku nodded. Decided being friends with me was holding him back from his path to becoming a top hero, so he turned on me with the rest of my class. The whole didn't the teachers do anything? Most just pretended they didn't see anything. Are you kidding me? Kara cried out, calming down a little when Superman put a hand on her shoulder. Unfortunately, that's the standard in quirk society. John replied. The few that are unpowered are seen as contemptible. Even some with quirks that aren't seen as useful in being pro-heroes are seen with a bit of disdain. So he was treated like a leper by everyone? Kara and Superman looked ready to go hurt someone. John had a visible blower on his face, and even Batman's knuckles could be heard cracking as he tightened his fist. My mom used to have a few friends who'd come over. Izuku continued. But she told them to never come back after they started offering condolences for having a quirkless boy. Okay, you can tell on me later, Clark, but that is such bullshit. Kara hollered. Where do those people get off with stuff like that? Arrogance and power trips has my vote. Batman replied. That also means that Midoriya is going to require social training as well. He looked at the others. How many female league members are in his age range? Superman's jaw was slackened considerably by the time they heard the man's plan. Let me get this straight. Your plan to deal with his inability to handle being around girls his age is to surround him with superheroines in his age range, in swimsuits and the like? He gave the man a look. Bruce, did you try Tamaranian beer again? Better friends than enemies, Clark. He replied. How many female villains have tried using sex appeal against you? Or me? Even Flash and Lantern have had that happen. Point. But we go with volunteers only. Kara's hand shot up so fast, there was almost a small sonic boom. I volunteer as tribute. What? Izuku yelped, looking in alarm. To help, I mean. She smiled sheepishly. I'm letting you explain that to my parents, Wayne. Clark muttered. The normally stoic hero winced enough to be visible. Thanks a lot, Kent. That was the previous day. He'd already been given a communicator so he could commute back and forth like them, and they'd gotten him a room in Titan Tower, across the hall from Cyborg, for when he stayed over. Now though, the Titans were facing something they'd never encountered before, helping another teen actually act like one. The only problem was they didn't know how to broach the subject. At least, in a way that as Starfire put it wouldn't make them all appear as a band of Zarbnarfs. Robin made a try at first, but he was admittedly bad at small talk. After a few attempts, he just asked if Izuku wanted to see if there was anything worth watching. Beast Boy suggested he hang around as something fluffy to see if that'd help him relax a little, but the others were worried that might send the wrong message, and possibly be seen as a tad creepy. Starfire thought baking him the Telkmerm welcome tart would help, until Cyborg reminded her the last one she made tried to mate with him. So now, they were all around the TV, all of them looking like they were trying hard to think of something to say. Until Raven finally spoke up. Okay, this is getting ridiculous. She sat down beside him. Midoriya, we all know your social skills are crap, but we've put up with Beast Boy for years. So you don't have anything to worry about. Right, and IHEY. The teen hero in question yelped indignantly. She just smirked a bit. Because just like him, we can tell you're genuinely a good guy who just has no idea what he's doing, but means well. Oh. Thanks, I think. Also, one should never face that condition, not when they are as adorable as you, new friend Izuku. Starfire joined in, causing him to freeze and go red again as she wrapped him up in a nearly crushing hug. Adorable? He squeaked. Indeed. She then held up her pet, whatever he was called. He made some chitter of excitement to Izuku, possibly saying hi, and waved his appendage things in the boy's direction. I cannot help but think of Silky when I look your way. Izuku blinked, looking a tiny bit lost as to what exactly the alien girl meant. Thanks. And that leads us to the main deal. Raven took the seat beside him. You know I'm an empath, right? When he nodded, she continued, well, during the labyrinth, I could pick up on your emotions. And while I didn't say anything then, the mix you were putting out. She slowly ticked them off, anxiety that was bordering on panic-stricken fear, a desperate hope for things work out this time, a determination to live up to what you think everyone expects of you, and an overwhelming desire to belong, well, somewhere. And I'm being upfront when I say that's not a healthy combination. Oh, why you felt that, huh? Izuku sighed, looking at the floor. Batman didn't really give us all the details, aside from the fact you live in a region that has a high concentration of quirk users, so it's fairly easy to guess you didn't exactly have things easy. Robin responded. He said we could ask, but to let you tell when you felt ready. Izuku wanted to ignore it, say it wasn't a big deal, but that was quickly squashed by a new part, something that had appeared when John said he was invited to the Watchtower. It reminded him that these people not only didn't care that he had no quirk, they wanted to see him reach his best, they wanted to help him become a hero. And most of all, they wanted to help repair the damage he'd gotten over the past 10 years. With that thought, he quietly mustered up what courage he could, and looked up at them. It started the day after I was diagnosed as quirkless dash. Diagnosed. They actually said that? A new voice blurted out, making him jump. You get diagnosed if you have a medical condition, not when you're a regular human. What jackass thought that was a good idea? J. Jinx. Izuku nearly fell off the couch. What's she doing here? Dude, relax, she's on our side now. Cyborg spoke up. It's cool. Wah? Yeah, it's a long story, but let's just say my conscience decided to come back with a vengeance. The plucky gothish girl cartwheeled over the couch's back and into Izuku's lap. So, you're the new league member, huh? She smiled coyly, before she was abruptly pushed off him by a familiar black-colored aura. Hey! I thought the idea was to help him get some socializing. Keyword, help. Not leave him catatonic. Raven answered her. And what's that supposed to mean? Think I'm too much woman for him? Given that his mother is the only positive female contact he's had before joining the league? Yes. Seriously. Jinx leaned back a little, definitely caught off guard by that. Though it quickly faded, oh, a mama's boy, huh? She leaned in and whispered seductively. I'll be your mommy. Izuku sat there, a somewhat blank expression on his face. Internally, he was screaming bloody murder. Robin rubbed his temples. Beast Boy, hold her down? Right. He promptly changed into an octopus and tangled Jinx up. Ooh, kinky. She squirmed against the tentacles some, but to no avail. Sticky too. Izuku stared, jaw going slack some. Raven gently patted his shoulder. Like I said, you're not the only one who has problems socializing. Right. He cleared his throat to calm himself a little. Where was I? Diagnosing? Beast Boy offered. Oh yeah, he quickly turned to the current mollusk. How are you doing that? I mean, I know you can, but how? Octopi don't even have lips. Beast Boy shrugged, or as well as an octopus could. Between Aqualad's marine life telepathy and Raven's broad-range emotion reading, I managed to pick up a few tips. You mean you managed to just learn how to do that? I didn't know that was actually possible. He stopped when a large metallic hand gently covered his face. Dude, we can geek out over superpowers all you want later once you're comfortable enough with us to do so, down in the lab. Cyborg let go of the other boy's head. But comfort first, deal? Oh yeah, right. So? Diagnosing Robin said, visibly fighting the urge to use air quotes. Yeah. Over the next several minutes, the group listened as he recalled the class, and especially the boy he used to call his friend, turning on him for it when they learned he had no quirk. And what led to a decade of bullying. He even felt brave enough to show one of the scars on his arm he'd gotten from the blonde boy's quirk. As he reached the moment when Bakugo told him to try jumping off the school roof, he quickly realized the mood had changed considerably. Robin looked calm, but the sound of his knuckles could be heard, cracking violently. Beast Boy had spikes slowly growing from his mantle, his eyes almost pinpricks. Wonder if that punk-ass explosions are stronger than my sonic cannon. Cyborg muttered to himself. Starfire looked like she couldn't decide if she was more upset or pissed. And both Raven and Jinx sat there silently, eyes glowing malevolently. Izuku started to sweat, thinking he'd said the wrong thing. He slowly glanced to the door, along with any possible escape route. Raven quickly picked up on the boy's rapidly growing panic and forced her ire down. Midoriya, it's not you we're getting angry at. She took a deep breath, the glow fading. It's just, we've all had similar experiences in the past, and the fact you were put through it for something a reason as petty as that pisses us off, for lack of a better term? Robin added. What he said. Suddenly, she moved and clapped her hand over his mouth as he started to say something. Jinx raised an eye. Okay, why'd you do that? He was unanimously voted in as a member of the League for security reasons. Okay, and that means what, exactly? He was able to figure out everyone's secret identities based on publicly available information. And he was about to respond to what you said about us all having things like that in our past by. Robin started. Reciting it, yeah. Beast Boy whistled. And I thought Robin could get scary when he goes batty-axed. He sputtered when a cushion caught him in the face, courtesy of the boy wonder. Hee mmf asterisk snort asterisk. The Titans quickly turned to Izuku when they heard that. Quick, do that again. Jinx chirped, throwing Robin another cushion, who quickly slapped Beast Boy with it. Asterisk snort asterisk ha. Thank you all for watching this video and goodbye.